So, as you might know, I have a background in cultural anthropology, which is basically the science of exploring and understanding different cultures. And at some point in my UX writing career, I tried to find blog posts and podcast episodes, etc., about how our culture affects the way we write and perceive UX copy. Because from all that I know about intercultural communication, there must be a correlation between the two. But I didn't find anything about this correlation, so I dove into the topic myself and found so many cool, interesting insights, which I'm going to share with you today. Hey everyone, my name is Kat and I teach people about writing in tech, and on this channel you will find everything that you need to know, especially about UX writing. So if you want to learn more about all of that, make sure to hit subscribe and ring the bell. Now, I'm a cultural anthropologist turned UX writer, and to be more precise, I studied cultural anthropology and communication sciences, and then I spent some time in corporate communications, and later I stumbled into UX writing. So cultural anthropology is definitely one of my academic interests. It has always been just so fascinating for me how cultural aspects shape our perception and our thinking and our behavior. And of course, it is so obvious that the cultural differences between us must also have an impact on UX writing. But unfortunately, this has barely been talked about so far. So let's explore this, and let's start with understanding what cultural differences are. This is something we just have to get off the table, okay? So after that, I promise we will approach this topic from a more practical perspective. Now, formally, cultural differences are variations in values, beliefs, behaviors, and customs that exist between different groups of people based on their cultural backgrounds. So we learn that culture can be responsible for us differing in our values and beliefs and behaviors. And for us, that means a lot of things. It, for example, means that culture has a major impact on what we perceive as right or wrong. It also has an impact on what we perceive as appropriate or inappropriate, or polite and impolite. And therefore, culture has a major impact on how we communicate and how we would like to be communicated with. And therefore, it also affects the way we perceive UX copy. And of course, it also affects the way that we write UX copy. So let's dive a little deeper here and see how exactly cultural differences show in UX writing. And if we take a look at the same question, for example, in UX design, so how do cultural differences show in UX design? We see a lot of blog articles discussing all kinds of aspects about how culture affects different elements of UX design. And we also find a lot of studies and journal articles in academic research about the exact same topic, but UX writing, not so much. Now, there is an entire discipline that is called intercultural communication, which helps us to understand in which ways communication can be affected by our cultural background. And looking at the findings of this discipline, we can derive a lot of knowledge for our discipline UX writing. And from this, we learn that aspects that are affected by cultural differences are, for example, the information architecture, the layout of our content, the storytelling of our brand, the level of detail of the information that we provide, the level of formality in our voice and tone, the way we address our users. So do we call them by their first name? Do we say hi or good evening or whatever? The level of humor we consider appropriate, and other aspects. And of course, as I said, we are practitioners, so we want to know what that means in practice, right? So let's take a look at an example by conducting our own little cross-cultural analysis here. And I decided to do that by comparing websites in the field of banking, because banking and finances and, everything that has to do with managing money and loans and credit scores are typically something that is seen very differently in different cultures. It is also seen differently in different religions, and it also highly depends on country-specific laws. So this is good soil for analyzing cultural differences. And for our cross-cultural analysis, I wanted to choose 2 countries that are very different from each other in their communication styles, and there are several models that show us how countries differ in their communication styles. This one right here is one of them, and this pays especially close attention to whether the communication style of a culture tends to be more emotional or more confrontational. And looking at this, I decided to go with my home country, Germany, and one of the countries whose culture has been found to be really different from the average German communication style, which is India. So what I did is I took a look at different banks from both countries, and I want to give you a quick glimpse at some of the results that I found, which might give you an idea of how cultural differences can show in UX writing. And the first difference is a real classic, and that is the number of alternative options that we offer the user and that the user can choose from. So German websites tend to offer a rather small number of items to choose from whenever the user is offered several options, like here, for example, which is an overview of the services, or here, an overview of the news articles, or here, the reasons for why we should choose a bank. And this number is always somewhere between 3 and 5 options. And we see that Indian banking websites tend to offer more options, like here, for example, a service or product overview, or here, another service overview. And the number of options tends to be about twice as much, somewhere between 7 and 10. We also see that in the footer design, where we are more likely to see a collection of many clickable links on Indian websites, like here, for example, or here. And when we take a look at the German banking websites, we will probably see much smaller footers with far fewer options. And this is probably because in India, more options are considered more trustworthy, and in Germany, quite the opposite is the case. The same is true for the overall layout and information architecture, or put in other words, the richness of content. When we take a look at Indian banking websites, they tend to offer a larger number of items, of information blocks, generally a lot of content, like here or here, a lot of numbers and text elements, at least compared to the German website, where we tend to find fewer text elements in total and far more white space when we compare it to the Indian websites. So there seems to be a strong difference in information architecture, layout, and content design. But there are more differences in which UX writing can differ from culture to culture. And in our case, we also find strong differences in the voice and tone design, for example, the level of emotionality. And as we have learned, the Indian communication culture tends to be more emotionally expressive. And Germany, well, not so much. And we definitely see that in our little case study as well. For example, when we take a look at this website right here, which is about the user being proud of themselves, or here, which talks about life goals. And we see that German banks, on the other hand, tend to be much more subtle, right? They don't put strong emphasis on emotions at all, but rather they focus on concepts like banking being easy, flexible, simple, etc. And these are all concepts that you find on absolutely every German banking website that, you know, seems to be kind of their comfort zone when it comes to communicating their benefits. Practical aspects, right? Now, one example can be found here, for example, where we read the word flexible, or here we read easy, fast, convenient. And we see that all of these are very practical aspects, right? Not emotional aspects. And what you can also see here in these German examples is that the grammar and punctuation choices are also absolutely non-emotional. It's pretty much either no punctuation at all or very subtle full stops, but never an exclamation mark. While when we take a look at some of the Indian banking websites, we are more likely to see exclamation marks, even double exclamation marks, like here or right here. this is definitely something that you would never see on a German banking website. And again, the reason for that is probably that emotions may play an important role in the brand-to-client bond in some cultures and could be seen as non-professional or irrational in other cultures, okay? That's what these differences look like in practice. And the same is true for the level of emotional and experience-based terminology. So when we go back to our Indian examples, we see that we're more likely to read expressions like "we make you feel special," or further down we find a direct mentioning of great experiences and something that is worth more than all the money in the world: peace of mind. My friends, the most important thing in the world, peace of mind. So we see vocabulary like proud, experience, special, peaceful, while on German banking websites there is a stronger emphasis on concepts like, as I said, flexible, fast, easy, secure, etc., as we can see, for example, here or maybe here. Now, these were just some examples of the kind of culture-induced differences in UX writing that we can find for this specific case. To complete this, however, here is an important disclaimer. Not all of the differences that we have seen must be caused by culture. They can also be caused by, for example, brand voice, or what your specific target audience prefers, or the trends that are currently out there. Or it may even just be the personal preferences of your designers and writers, or other factors that may have an impact on how we design and write content. But we have to acknowledge that culture is definitely one of them. And the other thing that we have to mention here is that there's a very, very thin line between cultural awareness and prejudices, which is also why I always say culture A tends to prefer this and that, and never culture A prefers that, okay? So the choice of words is very important here. And the overall motto of all of this should be careful, but not afraid of working with the concept of culture in UX writing, okay? Just become aware. So how can we actually do that? How can we incorporate cultural considerations in our UX writing process? Well, first of all, please keep in mind to write clearly when you write UX copy in the first place. Don't go too crazy with humor and punchlines and idioms and metaphors and so on, because this will make it easier to get your message across in different languages. And of course, we need to conduct a lot of user research for each market that we want to publish our product or website in. But also, let's do more desk research, okay? So study the material that's already out there. And this also includes academic research, for example, research papers like this one right here. And also what I would like to encourage you to do is help diversify that research. We see that a lot of blog posts are written from a Eurocentric or US perspective. We also see that a lot of new blog posts circle around the same topics that have already been discussed 1,000 times. And instead of writing the next article about how to write an error message correctly, let's push the boundaries of our discipline a little further and explore what we don't already know a lot about, okay? And this also includes, of course, cultural aspects in UX writing. And if you want to dive deeper into this, there are tools and models and theories that can definitely help us with that. One very helpful model is the Cultural Dimensions model by Gerd Hofstede, which you can find a lot about online. Now, this model consists of 6 dimensions, which help us to compare the culture of different countries with each other. And this model is definitely not flawless, not perfect. So again, be mindful with the information you'll get here, okay? But it's definitely helpful to get a first idea of how certain cultures differ from each other. And to use this model, you can simply go to hofstedeinsights.com and go to compare countries, enter 2 or more countries and see how they differ from each other. And if we do that, for example, for our example right here, our Indian-German cross-cultural analysis, we can see that, for example, power distance is higher in India than it is in Germany, which means that hierarchies and authorities play a bigger role in India. And Germany, on the other hand, ranks higher in long-term orientation and uncertainty avoidance, which means that the concept of future and leading a good life in the future is super important. And that could also be an indicator for why Germans tend to find concepts like safety and security so important. So this tool will definitely give you an idea, but I don't recommend fully relying on this tool or other tools alone. Instead, work with localization experts that know about the culture, about the political structure, the religion, and the trends of that certain market that you want to publish your product in. Because working with these experts will definitely help you to meet the needs and demands and preferences of your new target audience. But most of all, I want to leave you with a piece of advice that I consider most important. As UX writers, our mission is to help users reach their goal. So just like with everything else, let curiosity, empathy, and respect for users and the human beings that they are guide you when you want to dive deeper into this topic, okay? And that's it. And another way to dive deeper into this topic is, of course, you can take a look at my online course, which is called Culture-Based UX Writing. But only if you like to, of course, then you can find the link in the description below. And other than that, if you have any questions about this topic or if there's anything that you would like to know about this topic, just drop me a comment, okay? And we will figure this out. Now, this is a good moment to end this video, I think. So thanks for watching. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, where I also share free tips and tricks about writing in tech. And of course, as always, keep on writing, enjoy the process, and I hope to see you sometime soon.